By the beginning of 1943, the situation of the Japanese Imperial Army in New Guinea looked very difficult. An attempt to attack Port Moresby in the summer and fall of 1942 had failed, and the strategic bridgeheads at the villages of Buna, Gona, and Sanananda had been lost. Japanese losses in killed, dead from disease, and missing amounted to about 15,000 men. On the other hand, the situation was far from critical. The Japanese still controlled most of the island and hoped to take revenge for the defeats of the past months. Since December 1942, the Japanese Army Command had been hatching plans to send large reinforcements to New Guinea. This was hindered by two problems: Allied aircraft based in Port Moresby and the inability of the Imperial Navy to provide escort for a large convoy of ships and naval aviation. It was only after the evacuation of Guadalcanal in February 1943 that Lieutenant General Hitoshi Imamura, commander of the 8th Army Group, and Vice Admiral Gunichi Mikawa, commander of the 8th Fleet, made the final decision to ensure that the 18th Army Headquarters and part of the 51st Infantry Division, about 7,000 men in all, would be delivered to the port of Leh. Since Allied aircraft had never been able to disrupt any Japanese convoy operations off the coast of New Guinea, there was a good chance of success. The Navy agreed to allocate for Operation 81, this name was given to this convoy, modern destroyers with experienced crews and solid, on paper, fighter cover, including even an air group of light aircraft carrier Zuiho. While Japanese strategists were preparing the convoy operation, the American and Australian air forces based in New Guinea, commanded by American Lieutenant General George Kenney, did not waste time. The U.S. 5th Air Army Commander, Brigadier General Ennis Whitehead, and the 9th Task Force of the Royal Australian Air Force, Commander Commodore Joe Hewitt, were preparing for battles with the experience they had. New valuable aircraft appeared at the front: American P-38 Lightning heavy fighters and Australian Beaufighter heavy fighters with long-range and powerful armament. A group of enthusiastic American officers developed topmast bombing tactics that were to enable Army bombers to attack Japanese ships effectively. Another useful innovation was the frontal modification of the A-20 and B-25 bombers, with the installation of 8 heavy machine guns in the nose of the aircraft. The Japanese convoy left Rabaul on the night of February 28, March 1st. Due to the presence of slow-moving transports, its speed was only 7 knots. The route was along the northern coast of New Britain. The destination was the port of Leh in Huon Bay, New Guinea. Already on March 1st, the ships were detected by a patrol bomber B-24, but the strike followed only the next day. On March 2nd, from 10 to 11 o'clock, the convoy was attacked in 2 waves by 28 B-17 bombers under cover of P-38 heavy fighters, dropping 1,000-pound, 450-kilo bombs from an altitude of 1,500 meters. During this attack, the transport Kyokusei Maru, 493 tons, was lost, and 2 other ships were damaged. The destroyers Yukikaze and Asagumo picked up 950 soldiers from the water and at full speed headed for Lai. The next morning, having landed the rescued, they returned to escort the convoy. The day thereafter passed without shock to the Japanese, despite an attempted attack by another group of 11 B-17s in the evening. Unfortunately for Admiral Kimura, his ships were tracked at night by Australian Catalina flying boats, which had so far made no attempt to attack. In the early morning of March 3rd, the convoy was approaching Huon Bay, the final point of its route, under cover of 40 A-6M fighters. The first Allied attack of the day was a dawn strike by 8 Australian Beaufort torpedo carriers. Only 2 machines were able to drop torpedoes without achieving hits. However, this was only a test of strength. Already at 7 o'clock, the main forces of the Allied Air Force rose from their bases to deliver a decisive blow. At the same time, 24 American and Australian bombers with fighter cover went to bomb Lae airfield, neutralizing this air base for the next few hours. The Allies managed to organize a well-coordinated attack of different types of aircraft from different directions, which practically paralyzed the Japanese air defense and disoriented the fighter cover. It should be taken into account that the American pilots were going to use for the first time in the battle topmast bombing. To perform this dangerous task, selected volunteers. In fact, the outcome of the battle was decided in the first 20 minutes. The Allies lost 3 P-38 fighters and 1 B-17 bomber, claiming 15 downed Japanese fighters. For the convoy, the airstrike was a complete disaster. The small transport Kembu Maru, 950 tons, carrying gasoline in barrels, was killed instantly. The other 6 ships lost power and caught fire, after which people began to abandon them. Flagship destroyer Shirayuki, already shot by Australian attack aircraft, bomb blast tore off the stern. Wounded Admiral Kimura moved to Shikinami. The destroyer Arashio was hit by 3 bombs and in addition collided with the transport Nojima. The crew also had to abandon it. The destroyer Tokitsukaze was hit by a bomb in the engine room and lost steam. At 15:30, a second attack took place. 15:20 Japanese A-6M fighters tried to cover the doomed ships, but the Allies effortlessly swept them out of the way. 7 fighters were reported shot down. The strike planes then literally pelted the helpless enemy with bombs. 5 burning transports and destroyer Shirayuki, with torn off the stern, died under the blows of American B-17, B-25, and Australian Bostons. The heroic Asashio was also lost, receiving 4 to 6 bomb hits and sinking in 15 minutes. The last remaining on the water transport, Oigawa Maru, 94 tons, at night discovered and sent to the bottom of the American torpedo boats PT-143 and PT-150, which came from Port Moresby. The destroyer Arashio was hit on the morning of March 4. Strangely enough, the longest survived immobilicide and left by the crew of the destroyer Tokitsukaze. It was sunk only in the afternoon of March 4th. After the battle in the Bismarck Sea, the Japanese military leadership had to virtually stop using transports in the area of the Allied Air Force off New Guinea, although slow-moving ships still appeared for quite a long time near the remote northern coast of the island. Henceforth, these tasks had to be solved by separate voyages of fast warships and submarines, as well as extensive use of self-propelled barges. Of course, this situation significantly weakened the capabilities of the Japanese army on the island and largely deprived it of strategic initiative. In April 1943, the command of the Imperial Navy tried to strike a kind of retaliatory strike to organize a powerful air offensive in New Guinea, Operation J, but its results were modest, and return air supremacy to the Japanese failed. A brilliant victory was given to the Allies at a very low cost. Above, we have already mentioned 3 fighters and 1 bomber shot down directly in the battle. In addition, when landing crash damaged bomber and fighter, 13 airmen were killed and 12 were wounded. With the help of General Kenny, the Allied propaganda greatly exaggerated the enemy's losses, calling absolutely fantastic figures. 6 sunk destroyers or light cruisers and 14 transports, 50 downed aircraft. But even without such exaggeration, success was grandiose. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea deservedly became one of the most resounding victories of the American and Australian Air Forces in World War II, albeit marred by the victor's cruelty to the vanquished.